Thank you for being here. You are all smart, the proof that you found the room. So, okay, let me begin by referring to the joint proposal we adopted, Mr. Ehud, Olmert, and myself. And that joint proposal does not pretend to be a full and comprehensive peace plan. It covers only three important issues. One, the necessity to stop the war in Gaza, which today in the morning we hear that the war now seems to be resumed. And two, the overall political solution in the form of two states, Israel and Palestine, on the basis of 1967 borders. And three, the future of Jerusalem as the capital of the two states. We believe that the three issues are very important issues, and in the joint proposal we also call on the people in office on both sides to continue negotiations on the other important issues left without position, including settlement, settlers, refugees, additional security issues, and things like that. In other words, we took into consideration the fact that we are not in office. And what we have presented is not an attempt to show that we have the solution for everything. Although we believe that there is a solution for everything, nevertheless, it should be left for elected people, elected officials to negotiate the rest and to come up with the comprehensive plan. But it is our duty now to raise up our voice and say that the current course is the wrong one and the killing and destruction must stop. We need to change the course and we need to go for some kind of understanding about Gaza and then the overall political solution, as I said. Let me refer to the situation in Gaza. Now, our paper is very close in part of it to what was presented by President Biden to the international community and then was incorporated in Security Council Resolution 3275. In a way, it was okay, and in a way, it is the first part that was agreed upon in the deal that was reached between Hamas and the Israeli government, the current Israeli government. Now, when the deal was reached, we were put in a dilemma. On one way, we wanted to support the deal because there is the release of hostages, there is the release of prisoners, families are happy, and things are going on. There is the entry of the humanitarian assistance. All these are important things for the people, and we wanted to support that. At the same time, we understood that there is no agreement on the second phase. There is no agreement on the political aspect and what would happen in Gaza after that. So, nevertheless, we said, fine, we support the deal, but we will see what's going to happen. And now we are stuck. Now we are stuck. Now I have to refer to the ideas of forced deportation of Gazans, building Riviera and things like that, just simply to say that it is utterly unacceptable to speak of any forced deportation, mass deportation of any Palestinians from Gaza or the West Bank or anywhere else, or any person in the world. I mean, this is something that violates strongly international humanitarian law and should not happen. Unfortunately, until now, we don't see such a forceful international reaction to the idea. But anyway, the idea is not implementable anyway, given the position of Egypt and Jordan, the countries surrounding Palestine. And I want to be very clear here and say this forceful position is final and it's not going to change. Why? Because it has to do with the national security of the two states. It's not the Palestinian interest that drives the position, it's the national interest of these two states, so it's out of question. It's not going to happen. Then came, of course, the Arab Summit and the plan that was adopted. And I want to be positive with the plan. I want to say that let's consider it as a step in the right direction. Let's not say that it's a failure, and let's work together to improve this plan in a way that would make it operational, which I think, unfortunately, it is not at this stage. Because of the American position, because of the Israeli position, I don't think that it's going to happen. We need to add some elements to the plan, including elements related to the necessity of Hamas departing from the picture, and including elements that deals with the necessity of taking into consideration, one, that Mr. Abbas and his cronies are not going to come back to govern Gaza, but at the same time takes into consideration the necessity of achieving unity and territorial integrity of the Palestinian land. It's a little bit complicated, but it's a must, and we have to achieve that. Now, then came the negotiations, direct negotiations between the U.S. government and Israel and Hamas, and I think that was a terrible mistake. Why? It is not because of what Hamas represents. It's because of lack of the intimate knowledge of the Palestinian situation. You cannot deal with the situation with just superficial knowledge that leads to a position saying, for instance, okay, disarm and leave Gaza. It's not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And I'm ready to take the responsibility for saying that. Now, what can happen is something different, but maybe achieving same results. Something like transforming Hamas into a political party, giving them an opportunity to play a role in the political life, Palestinian political life, whether in Gaza and the West Bank, or things like that. And then you have to find solutions for the security and the arms and things like that. That can be achieved through Palestinian discussion, inter-Palestinian discussion with Hamas and other parties. So solutions are there. We can find solutions, but we need to put the pieces in place, which is not easy. Unfortunately, until now, I was hoping personally that the Arab Summit will be an opportunity to achieve precisely that. Well, as we agreed, hopefully agreed, that it was a step, but not really a complete one. So we'll see what's going to happen. Until now, we don't have the pieces in place, but we know what should be done, what has to be done. We know, all of us, and that will lead to the overall political solution. Let me finally, not to take lots of your time, mention one thing. Arab security presence. We propose in our joint proposal an Arab security presence. This is different than an international force. Arab security presence that can have additional component, European component or whatever component, but not an international force. What's the difference? International force, it's basically non-Arab, and it has to be done through the Security Council, which is a no-go, as we all know. We cannot have an international force because the United States is not going to put boots on the ground. And if the United States does not put boots on the ground, the friends of the United States are not going to put boots on the ground. There will be no Security Council resolution. And most important of all, there will be a hostile position by the population. Because you don't remove the Israelis to bring us Australians or Canadians or French or Germans or whatever. It's not like that. Arab security presence is something different. The Arabs will have the opportunity to tell the Palestinians, especially those in Gaza, that we are coming with Israeli commitment, A, to full withdrawal from Gaza without return, and B, to the political process that leads to Palestinian state with an agreement on the state in advance, a priori. Now, mutual recognition can come later, 3 years or whatever, but agreement on the end result should happen from the beginning. Finally, I want to say that what we propose, I think, is something that is doable, provided that it gets the necessary support from the public and from certain governments, especially in the region. And two, it's the only way forward. Now, of course, the two sides can negotiate the relationship between the two states up to a confederation or in between. We will see, but we cannot be ahead of ourselves and say this should be the situation. We don't know what's going to happen. And, all other ideas, while are meant to be positive, one state or I don't know what, but in reality are something that cannot be implemented. So in reality, we have only this, the idea, the principle of partitioning the land and having two states, with some negotiations on the relationship between the two states up to anything that can be decided, confederation or even more than that. But it's the idea of having two states that's a necessity, and that there is no alternative to this. So finally, the 1 page and quarter that we presented, while it's short, I think it's full with ideas, including ideas related to the situation in Gaza and ideas related to the overall political solution. Thank you all again, and I know I don't want to take more than what I took from your time, and of course, we'll be ready at a later stage to involve with any discussion that you might want to have. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Now that Dr. Qidwa so eloquently described the parameters of our joint statement and ideas about Gaza and about the creation, hopefully, as a result of negotiations. I believe that all negotiations between Israel and Palestine are going to be very tough and very intense. They are not loose. It's not, just a friendly meeting. It's a confrontation of legacies that come from different directions, of people that have different memories and different ambitions and different pains. They have to overcome from both sides a great deal of controversies within itself, each community, and also to build up something that will be credible, that will be stable, that will allow, hopefully, the conclusion of an historic conflict that costed so much blood and so much instability and so much pain and suffering from both sides for so many years. But so, had I presented it on the first place, I may have emphasized some different points, but we are completely united in our joint proposal, and this is what we believe in, this is what we are campaigning for, this is what we are trying now to do for quite a period of time, shuttling across the world particularly Europe, with many different capitals, foreign ministers, representatives, leaders, prime ministers, in order to try and bring back the concept of two states into center stage of international discussion, which it is not. You don't hear about it, not, of course, the local leaders. You don't hear any major or senior Palestinian representative talking about it. You don't hear any of the Israelis who are holding formal positions, either in government or in opposition, talking about it. It's not nice, it's not the right time, let's postpone it. It may create some opposition, and maybe not always those who support us will also support the two states, so let's keep it aside for the time being, and all kinds of this nonsense. What we set out, first of all, to do is to bring it back into center stage and force the international community to relate to it and to understand that at the end of the day, regardless of what we may say, in spite of all that we are going through, definitely talking this morning with the unnecessary resumption of the hostilities and violations and confrontations in Gaza, there is no alternative for a political solution other than this. No alternative. There can be many ideas. There are one-state idea, which is sometimes sounds to be attractive to some, but which is, in my mind, is a non-starter, because this is a prescription for endless historical confrontations and terror and fighting and bloodshed between Jews and Palestinians forever. But this is one way that people can discuss and talk about. There are other ideas. There are some, I don't know if you heard about it, some that believe that Gaza should be indeed, that the Gazans should be deported completely, not in order to build the Trump Towers hotels, but in order to allow the settlements of Israeli settlers in Gaza as a preliminary step in order to then take over the south of Lebanon for the next step, and then also taking the west of Syria for the third step. So there are some such ideas that are running through, so on and so forth. Now, in the midst of all of this, the most frequent question that we are asked, and believe me now, this is the 30th convention that and conference that we participate together, Dr. Qidwa and myself. He's so patient with me, it's unbelievable. He's ready to hear me time and again, even though he knows what I'm going to say. In everywhere, in every part of Europe and the Middle East, the most popular question, the frequent question we are asked is, what are the chances? What is the probability that circumstances will change to the degree that we will be able to do what you are trying to do now, which is to first bring it back into the center stage of international discussion, and then perhaps also trying to work on the actual implementation, going through, of course, negotiations between Israel and Palestine and the leaderships, the former leaderships, the representative leaderships, in order to reach an agreement on all the major issues. Now, number one, I have to say, had it been very popular on the first place, you wouldn't have needed neither Dr. Qidwa and myself. The reason why it is so important is because it's not popular presently. And when it's not popular, if someone will not rise, step forward, up front, and start to fight, no one will talk about it. And there are other things may take place which will be counterproductive in terms of what can be achieved in order to conclude this historical conflict. So, number one, we are fully aware that it is not the most popular idea right now. But I kept saying, and I talk with many Israelis, of course, we have to try and influence our communities to start with. And I take every opportunity. And I say to my fellow Israelis, let's assume that just for the sake of discussion, okay, that we will do what has been targeted by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and we will eliminate every single Palestinian that lives under the sun. Not one single Palestinian with a gun, Hamas, I'm sorry, not Palestinian, Hamas will be eliminated, okay? There will not be any more Hamas. Finished, destroyed, completely. The complete ultimate victory that Netanyahu has been promising and declaring all the time. And then what? We still have 2.5 million Palestinians living in Gaza. We still have 3.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank. What we Israelis, leave aside now the other side, don't relate to their arguments, let's talk amongst ourselves. What are we going to do? What are we going to do in relation to the 6 million Palestinians? Are we going to be occupied forever? Is that what we want? Is this the destiny of the state of Israel, of the Jewish people? To be occupiers, to deny people, other people, from the fundamental rights of self-determination, for the freedom of movement, for the freedom of speech, for the freedom of occupation? Are we going to keep them subject to the benevolence and the goodwill of the settlers, of the hilltop youth, and what they are doing to them? Is this what we want? Do we believe that we can keep on moving in this world of ours without paying a price? Okay, let's not talk even about moral values, which are essential. But let's talk about the possible ramifications of this manifestation of brutality that is inevitable in the context of this occupation everywhere. So we have to look for a solution. Now, I'm an old guy, and I've been in different places, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I was on the wrong side for a lot of time. But I eventually understood that there comes a time where you have to do what is expected from a mature person who has a minimal degree of respect for himself. He has to look in the eyes of the problem and say to himself, what can be done that will make it different? What can be done that my grandchildren, they are already in the army, okay, 5 of them now, today, some of them in Gaza, and their children will not have to do the same. What do we do that the grandchildren of Dr. Nasser al-Qidwa and his Palestinian friends will not have to go through the miseries and the brutalities and the pain and the blood of occupation, and this is inevitable. So we have to stand up front and fight, and this is what we're trying to do now. And I think that it's not useless. There is a good chance. There is a good chance because the world is getting tired, and even those who are supposed to be our supporters, and I don't want now to refer to any particular names, the new leaders, old leaders, who recaptured their position, and you know whom I'm referring to, they will become tired much more rapidly than most people think, because they understand that continuing with this non-solution is a prescription for instability, for economic crisis, for regional confrontations, for international confrontations, for division between Europe and America, and inside Europe between this side and the other side, and that will lead us nowhere. So until then, what we are trying to do, and this is precisely the reason why we are moving rapidly from one place to the other, one capital to the other capital. We were last week in Paris, and we are very privileged to speak to a very large group of people in the College de France, and in Zurich, and in Azerbaijan, and we're going to go to Greece and to the Emirates. We are going to organize a big conference, sometimes beginning of June, hopefully, in Paris, with 1,000 participants, hundreds from Israel, hundreds from Palestine, and maybe also from European countries, that will force the leadership of their countries and the leadership of the international community and the Council on Foreign Relations of Europe and the State Department in America and even the Russians and the others to address themselves to the one possible political solution that in the end of the day can end it all. So, and I'll tell you something. I recently went through some of the books written about the Kennedys for different reasons. And there was one sentence which I always remembered that was originally said by Joe Bernard Shaw. And John Kennedy repeated it, and Bobby Kennedy used it in his campaign, his last campaign before he was assassinated. And he said, people see things as they are and ask why. I dream things that never were and ask why not. I dream peace between Israel and the Palestinians. And as I said before, to those of you who may want to attack me for my past performances going back 40 years ago, there were times that I spoke in a different language and I supported different moves. But it turned out that I understood what I understood and I moved forward. The core ideas of what we are talking about, important to remind, were originally presented by me to the Palestinian leader, Dr. Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, as president of the Palestinian Authority in 2008. I presented him with the full comprehensive plan for two states, Palestinian state on the 67 borders, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, he was not courageous enough and inspired enough and visionary enough to go ahead with it and sign it and move forward and change things in the region and perhaps much wider than just the region. What we are trying to do now is to do that which should have been done 15 or 18 or 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, but there is no better time, and our mission is to make sure that this last war, the most brutal war that was fought between Palestine and Israel, Palestinians and Israelis, will be the last one. Thank you.
Thank you both. I understand that you will maybe hang around while
yes, sure, why not?
we will have the
Thank you very
panelists
much.
join us.
Thank you.
Mr. Yossi Beilin, Jonathan. We do have two panelists joining us via Zoom as well. I don't know if they have already joined us. Mr. Beilin, please join us. Hiba Husseini, please. And we have Amos Yeldin and Dalal Arigat hopefully joining us from Zoom. Okay. Do we have Amos on? No? Okay. Maybe we will start while we're waiting for our participants to join through Zoom. Former Prime Minister, I think we have Ms. Arigat with us. Can you hear us? Great. and as soon as we get Mr. Yeldin and Yadlin as well, hopefully we'll have him on.
I'm with you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, you might want to come over a little bit this way, not to block. There we go. Thank you for joining us through Zoom. We just heard from former Prime Minister, former Foreign Minister, but given the shortage of time, I guess the ending that former Prime Minister had, let this be the last war, one that just last night has cost over 330 lives in Gaza from the reports that we have this morning at BBC. Obviously on the back of more than 48,000 that have been killed and the victims of October 7th. Maybe for that, I'll start with Yonatan Zagin because, first of all, my condolences. I'm sure all of you will join me as he lost his mother on October 7th. And you have also talked about, there's a quote from you, and I saw it a few places, that the only way to have security is to turn our enemies to our partners. We are in a time where it's hard to imagine in this level of killing that is happening that such thing is even possible. We heard our keynote speaker saying it is possible. Take us through what you think is feasible in these circumstances.
Hello. Can you hear me? First of all, I'll start by saying that it's an honor sitting with Palestinian panelists. I grew up in the 90s, so Yossi Beilin was considered a political hero back then. Times have changed. There's a children's game in Israel. It's translated into sick, dying, dead. And this is what has happened during my lifetime, since the 90s till what we're experiencing now to the peace process. As was said, I, on October 7th, have gone through a very helpless experience, talking with my mother, Vivian Silver, which in herself, she was a very prominent peace builder in Israel and Palestine. Talking with her throughout the morning and having to say goodbye to her on the line while she was being killed. It was a very helpless experience, but out of that helplessness, I had a few realizations. The first one was that it's not that we don't want peace because it's too complicated. Peace is complicated because we don't want it yet. And the other realization that I had, which was more of a sense of responsibility and urgency to participate and to be engaged and to contribute whatever I can into change. Because as I said, I think that it's not a question of plausibility or technicality, it's a question of will. So I felt the need to be engaged in creating that will. That will happen with a movement from a few sides, from civil society in Israel and Palestine, from the political sphere in Israel and Palestine, and from the international community, which has a role of accountability, not just worried bystanders. Because in Israel, we have a blind spot. We see security as the problem, whereas security is just a symptom. It's a symptom of the conflict. As long as we continue to see it as the problem, we will continue to use military force and do more of the same. And just do more of the same and expect different outcomes. We know what that means. So we need a strong signal from the international community as well as our efforts internally. That means offering incentives, and it means also inflicting sanctions and conditioning aid and participating in assertive diplomacy towards the two political sides. Thank you.
We'll come back to you. Ms. Husseini, do you want to take it from there?
Yes.
You might want to bring the, yes, thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
A little closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with all these distinguished panelists. And I think building on what you have just ended with, this conflict indeed has been very painful for all of us. And the loss of life, especially of a mother, and for all others who've lost mothers, fathers, children, brothers and sisters, is really, and for a conflict that has raged on for almost 75 years, and displacement after displacement of Palestinians, instability, insecurity, military occupation, occupied, occupier, and so forth and so on, is a state of being that we, the Palestinians, and I am sure many of our Israeli colleagues, and here we have Dr. Beilin, we have Mr. Olmert, and others, really have come to realize, even before you were born, that this conflict has to come to an end. Managing occupation doesn't work. People have a right to self-determination, and they will continue to resist, and they will continue to fight. And fighting takes us nowhere but to the pain and sorrow and the suffering that we have been experiencing. So on a positive, more positive note, in order to avoid this deep pain and deep injuries, as a Palestinian, I've always believed in peace. I've always been driven by a peace agenda in my involvement as a legal advisor to the Palestinian negotiations team dating back to 1994, and I continue to work towards peace. And along those lines, my work with Dr. Beilin on the Confederation is a proposal for a two-state solution. There is no solution but a two-state solution, and a territorial division of the land along agreed lines, negotiated lines, and so forth and so on, so that we can end this miserable conflict that has not only implicated the Palestinians and the Israelis, but our Arab neighbors and members of the international community. And now we see it going further into Syria and more, of course, to Lebanon, even before this current war and so forth. So the instability in the region and the instability, insecurity among Israelis and Palestinians cannot be continued without severe consequences, disastrous consequences for both of us. So again, as Dr. Nasser Qidwa said, I mean, displacement of Palestinians, mass transfers, deportations, I mean, do not solve the problem. What solves the problem is finding a fair, comprehensive solution. So our idea, and I'll just briefly touch on that, is to enable the idea of the confederation, and it came before actually this war, so it predated the October 7th. Realizing that the conflict cannot be managed. I mean, we have seen the symptoms. We have picked up on all these symptoms because remember, we've also had, for those of you who are more intimately involved in this conflict, or know more about this conflict, we had the second intifada also, so which have also created schisms and caused also internal Palestinian problems. So we realized that the conflict cannot be managed for so long without creating more and more wars and insecurity. So we're proposing the idea, and we have been working on this idea since 2020. So this did not come in a vacuum. It came from as a result of the situation on the ground. Again, we propose two states enabled through a confederal relationship. We deal with all the issues, of course. We deal with Jerusalem, we deal with security, we deal with economic issues, we deal with the settlements and the settlers, we deal with the entire relationship between the two sovereign states. So the idea is to have two sovereign states entering into the confederation at some point after they agree and negotiate all the details in terms of the conflict. I think Dr. Beilin, I'll leave it at that so that you continue with the description, but I'll also allude to the fact that we have dealt with the narrative, and perhaps you could take that up as well.
Please, if you don't mind also addressing what Mr. Olmert talked about, his conversations with his fellow Israelis. It was just mentioned you were a hero in the late 90s, and it's a very different circumstance. Those ideas, how do you convince Israeli public that has moved so far away from those days to give this a second look?
Thank you very much. Just if I may say something which is emotional for me, Jonathan, you had a heroic mother, a heroic mother. You don't have too many of them, really. And of course you will forever miss her. She was your mother, but for us, she was also an icon, a symbol. And the worst thing that might happen is that her assassination would be an excuse for others to say, you see these Arabs? How can we make peace with them? They killed the biggest peacenik around who wanted to help them. This is them. I mean, this is the wrong message that we may deliver. And Dalal, I loved your father. I loved your father. Your father, Saeb Arikat, was a Palestinian patriot. It was not easy with him. It was not easy to negotiate with him. But I knew one thing. He really wanted to find a solution. Not because of me, but because of him. And it was mutual. We are selfish people. The peace camps on both sides are very selfish people. They want it for their own children and grandchildren. And we are always accused by the other side internally that we love Arabs or we love Jews or whatever. No, we love ourselves. And if Israel will be in a situation whereby a minority of Jews is dominating a majority of Arabs, this is the end of the vision of our fathers and forefathers. This is why we wanted so much. And this is why people like Ehud Olmert, who I always love to hear what he says, because I always remember what he said in the past. And you need an amount of courage to cross the line. I always remember what you said, Ehud, after we came with the Geneva Initiative in 2003. You said something very interesting. It was in a group of Likud members, and Geneva was quite popular. We got 39%, and the headline of the daily Idiot Achronot. And Sharon was worried about it, and others. And you said, we should be worried, and we should oppose the Geneva Initiative, mainly because now we know what the solution will be. There won't be another solution. but the one that these people, Palestinians and Israelis, brought to the table. And if we are against the principles, we have to fight it. But we cannot say that this will not be the solution. And I think that with the same values, you are actually acting today, but looking at them from another angle. So I really appreciate and I really thank you. There was one issue that I wanted Dr. Qidwa to refer to. When we suggest, Hiba and myself, the confederation idea, people say, oh, it's a good idea. If you both Palestinians and Israelis agree to a confederation, to federation, to one state, to two states, to three states, to Riviera, who are we, the third parties in the world, to tell you that this is not the best solution? And one of the reactions that we get sometimes from both sides is that, okay, we are supporting the two-state solution. There is no other solution. We don't have to waste the rest of our lives in order to prove to each other that a one-state solution is a no-go. Even not the Riviera. But let us have the two-state solution first. Once we have two states, we can talk about any other umbrella arrangements, whatever. To speak now about a confederation is premature. This is not the order of things. And it is important for us to clarify to you, because we are like-minded people, and we are fighting for the same cause. That the confederation is not just nice to have after we find the solution, but this is the way to find the solution. Meaning, the point is that it is very difficult to implement the two-state solution. When we signed the Oslo Agreement in '93, we had 90,000 Israelis living in the occupied territories. Today, it is about 520,000 Israelis. No potential Israeli prime minister is going to evacuate those of them who will find themselves on the other side of a future border. The number of these people, according to the Geneva borders, which are not sacred, of course, is about 200,000 people. I don't see any prime minister in the future evacuating 200,000 people. I don't see them. Although you may say it is a democracy, and if the decision of the government and the Knesset is such that they have to move, they will have to move. Theoretically, it is right. Practically, it is wrong. So the main obstacle today, unlike '93, in '93 we could say Jerusalem, refugees, borders, water, you name it. We have actually, some of us were involved very seriously in finding solutions, including very, very tiresome and boring annexes about all these issues. If somebody really wants to go for peace, he just has to go to the library and to find the solutions and update and change here and there. But we did it. We know what are the solutions for all the outstanding issues. But there is one thing that we did not negotiate in the past. What are we going to do with the hundreds of thousands of settlers? If you don't come to me with a solution for that problem, just to say two-state solution is not enough today. It was a big deal 30 years ago. Today this is a consensus, not in Israel, but it is a consensus. So I would like to know what is the answer to this question, because if what we are suggesting, Hiba and myself and our groups, we are not only the two of us, is to have an agreement now about a confederation, not to go for it now, to implement the two-state solution, but to agree that all those settlers who would like to remain in the new Palestinian state will remain there and live there as Israeli citizens and Palestinian permanent residents. And the same number of Palestinian citizens who would like to live in Israel will have the right to do it as Palestinian permanent residents. And it is not the solution for the refugees. It has nothing to do with the refugees. On top of it, once we know, if we negotiate now, that this is going to be the solution, then we can go for the two-state solution. If we now negotiate the two-state solution and we say nothing about the settlers, we are actually turning our eyes from the most important obstacle in the market. So I think that since we are speaking about the same target, each of us from his or her own interest, we should tackle this issue this way or another. If there is another solution, fine. If you want to build a Riviera for them, beautiful. But if we don't come with it and we just say in 2025 we support the two-state solution, this is not enough. And the last point is what Hiba said before. People said to us, in our endless negotiations, the formal and the informal ones, if you don't tackle the root causes for the conflict, you will never solve it, because you always refer to 67 and you ignore 48. And there was something to it. There was something to it. And others said to us, but you will never succeed. Is it possible to succeed, to write a joint story? There are such huge gaps. We see things so differently.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's really, let me start by sharing my feelings. As I see personalities like Dr. Nasser, Yossi Beilin, and Olmert, these are the colleagues of my father. It brings me a feelings of hope and sadness. My father, like you, dedicated his life to negotiations, peace, dialogue, and diplomacy. He promised me and my generation peace, dignity, statehood, sovereignty, and liberation. Sadly enough, he had to leave this world without realizing any of his dreams and without delivering to me and my generation. I really hope that you will continue to work for peace and maybe move from the talk to the walk, because I'm afraid time passes very quickly, and I don't want you to meet the same fate that my dad had faced. It's really sad. And on that point, I want to also share my feelings with the loss of your mother and my empathy with every civilian soul that had been lost, not only on October 7th or after, but for the past 7 decades. The sufferings and the endurances under the Israeli military occupation, the apartheid regime, the confiscations of lands, settler colonialism, extrajudicial killings, detentions, and now the forced displacements. Those are things that we cannot continue to tolerate. If we are serious about our claim for peace, then as responsible leaders, we need not turn a blind eye to what had happened this morning. When we wake up to Israel continuing with waging a war against displaced people in tents, we have to say enough is enough. It's not okay what is happening. What is happening is when it's not only the labels of displacements or transfer or those are war crimes under international law. So for this sophisticated audience, I want to share some logical, maybe provocative ideas that we should not tolerate what Netanyahu and the right-wing government is doing, not only because we are peace seekers and peace believers, but also because this goes against international humanitarian law, international law, what the arrest warrants of the ICC. Israel is facing a case for genocide in the 21st century. This is not something that you should be working against. This is where Netanyahu and the right-wing government had taken you. And among the questions that were given to me by the moderators for this session were, how do we get rid of Hamas and how do we end the terror? Allow me to say, if we look from an academic, scientific perspective, what Israel is doing on the Palestinian lands against the Palestinian civilians actually amounts to a state terror action. Not only in Gaza and with the 50,000 souls which had perished under Israeli fire, but also in the West Bank. In the West Bank, more than 1,000 women were murdered since October 7th, let alone the 13,000 women, because we are in March and the world is celebrating the International Women's Day. 50,000 pregnant women had to give birth in dire humanitarian conditions. So we're not only talking about our hopes and aspirations for a strategic peace and the two-state solution, which we would love to see realized, but on the day-to-day realities of the sufferings of individuals, of civilians, this cannot continue. When we try to imagine the day after, the governance, yes, I agree with you. We need reconciliation. We need to disarm some movements. We need to stop the violence, because we all know violence can only breed more violence. And that's why I say, as long as Netanyahu and his government are enjoying impunity, nothing will stop the war crimes against the Palestinian people. However, as we talk about a two-state solution, I live in Ramallah, and I try to commute to Jericho to visit my mother sometimes, who is supposedly 30 minutes away, but then my route gets delayed to 2, 4, 6 hours just because of a military checkpoint or a flying checkpoint or an iron gate that is installed randomly between every Palestinian community. What I'm trying to tell you now, I'm not venting, I'm just trying to describe the reality under apartheid and under military occupation that we as Palestinians are living. And here I want to also rise up to the discussion of myself as a professor of diplomacy and my generation who was promised by the PLO leadership, Dr. Nasser, my dad, and others, with freedom, dignity, and all we find on the ground is more entrenched Israeli military occupation and more confiscations and more settler colonialism and more deprivation of basic rights. How do you also convince our people and the generations and my students that diplomacy still works? We want to continue to advocate, but I think it's really prime time that we move from the talk to the walk. It really doesn't take a genius. We don't have to reinvent the wheels of talking about the two-state solution, while on the ground, it is all about annexation. Again, I am a witness on the ground, and many of you, I'm sure, are here. You can see that Israel did not leave any room for the two-state solution. And Mr. Beilin just mentioned 520,000 settlers. No, allow me to correct you. It's more than 750,000 settlers now in the West Bank. So if we talk geopolitically speaking, really there is no, I would love to see the two-state solution realized. Really, I'm a big fan of it, and I still think it's the one and only strategic solution forward. Yet, logically speaking, on the ground, it's all about annexation, it's all about settler colonialism. Netanyahu said it bluntly. He doesn't want a Palestinian state. He wants more settlements. So my intervention, I would like to shed light on, when you speak about the root cause of the conflict, yes, let us tackle the Israeli military occupation. Let us start by ending the Israeli military occupation. Let us also consider that we need to define the border of the state of Israel. Because what we had witnessed in the past couple of months in Syria and Lebanon and the developments in the Golan Heights, etc., are nothing but the translation of the greater Israel, that Smotrich and Ben Gvir plans. Those who don't want peace, who don't want to see the two-state solution realized. Again, I want to end on a positive note and share my empathy again with everybody who suffered. But if we are seriously responsible for what we're talking about, then I think it's time we move to action. How do we protect the Israeli democratic state? This is a message to the Jewish Israelis. Israel, really, as a democratic state, had scandalized itself in the past 2 years. The label of democracy was replaced with the label of genocide at the ICJ. This is a serious alarm that every Israeli citizen must be thinking about right now on the international legal level. And I also want to remind you of the 2018 Knesset nation-state law. Because if you want to continue to brag about the democratic state of Israel, this nation-state law only granted rights for the Jewish residents of Israel and neglected and deprived 2 million other non-Jews of the basic rights in any statehood. What I'm trying to tell you is that it is time for Israel to act upon international law, to respect the international rules-based order, and to see that the Palestinians are not only minorities who can enjoy some religious rights or some social rights here and there. They are the people with the right to self-determination, and those rights are anchored and unalienable in the international law. It is Ramadan here for us as Muslims in Palestine. I was born in Jerusalem. On my ID, it says born in Jerusalem, yet I cannot enter Jerusalem. Why? Because Israel doesn't want to grant me my basic right of worshiping, my basic right of mobility, my basic right of being in the town where I was born, for example. I'm just sharing with you some facts about reality because the debate and the discussion needs to rise to a sophisticated and a bit difficult conversation which we need to address. This cannot continue. The Israeli military occupation must end immediately if we are serious. We need a time frame. And having said all this, I still see light. I still see hope. And I still see that with Trump administration, there is hope. As a Palestinian, I don't reject the Riviera of Gaza. I would love to see the Riviera realized in Gaza. I would love to see Gaza become the Saint-Tropez of the Middle East. Yet, if Trump is serious, he can come, he can negotiate with the owners of the land. He can negotiate with the Palestinians who should enjoy the Riviera and not be displaced, because displacement is a war crime to start with. However, I think with the International Coalition for Peace, the efforts done by France and Saudi Arabia, with the 100 like-minded countries, with the Trump administration, the Abraham Accords, with the efforts of the Emiratis, I think we can capitalize, we can leverage on those relations. Yet we need to understand that temporary, short ceasefires or truces here and there will not serve us strategically. If we are serious about a strategic peace, then we need to talk about a political framework that is serious, with guarantees, and with mediators who can guarantee that whoever violates any terms will not continue to enjoy impunity without accountability. I will stop here on a positive note, saying that I still see hope on a regional peace-mediated level for the Palestinians and the Israelis to enjoy peace, security, and stability. However, to continue to focus on normalization agreements on bilateral level with every Arab state or with every Muslim state without engaging with the Palestinians, this will never bring peace to our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ehud. Amos Yaldin, thank you for your patience. I know you have been waiting. We do have about 10 minutes, and I was hoping to go last round, but I don't think we will have that. So take it and tell us how do we walk the talk.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to see people who believe that we can reach peace and who are still dreaming on a two-state solution. I was belonging to these people. However, I'm afraid many of them lost touch with reality. And the reality is that on both sides, those who are against two-state solution are having the power and the majority. Hamas is the leading political power in Palestinian society and politics. We saw it on the 7th of October with their attack, cruel attack on Israel. And let me remind you that Israel left the Gaza Strip to the last inch and dismantled all the settlement. And we saw that 72% in the West Bank supported Hamas murderous attack on Israel, killing, raping, burning 900 innocent civilians. 57 supported them in the West Bank, including Professor Arikat. And unfortunately, this is the leading power in the Palestinian politics. In Israel, there was 2/3 of Israelis that supported two-state solution, I was chief intelligence officer near Prime Minister Olmert, which I admire as one of the best prime ministers of Israel. When he submitted a peace proposal to Abu Mazen, and unfortunately, Abu Mazen rejected it, as the Palestinians rejected the Clinton parameters 25 years ago, and they continue to reject every proposal for peace. When we are saying peace, two-state solution, people have different ideas on both sides. The most moderate in Israel and in the Palestinian society, they speak about different parameters on the borders, different parameters on refugees, different parameters on settlement, and you heard from Yossi Beilin, who also gave you some reality check, different perspective on Jerusalem, and of course the Palestinians never recognize Israel as a Jewish state. On the contrary, what we hear more and more in every demonstration, that they are not recognizing Israel at all, not even in the 67 border. They want to be from the river to the sea, very much like our right-wingers, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. So if you want a reality check, even the opposition in Israel, Gantz, Lapid, not to speak about Lieberman or Bennett or anybody from the moderate right, is not speaking today on Palestinian state. This is out of anybody that will run on this platform. They will not get more than 10%. Because in the Israeli society, the main narrative, we did Oslo and we got the murderers' second intifada, which lost 1,500 innocent people, and we engaged from the Gaza, and we got the 7th of October. So security is now something that even the leftists in Israel will not compromise on, will not compromise. And the security arrangement should be totally different, because we saw the jihadist move in the Palestinian society and the way they are treating now the hostages. This is the #1 issue for the Israelis now. And all what's happening in Gaza is because of the hostages. If the hostages would have given back 15 months ago, the war was over. And Israel will not accept Hamas in the Gaza Strip on any model, not the Hezbollah model that led to the destroy of Lebanon, and not in any other model, as long as they have weapons. So rebuilding of Gaza is a condition to demilitarization of Gaza. This is what we are looking for. I see that I was disconnected, so I will stop.
We can still hear you. Oh, there we are. You're back.
Okay, I want to say that I hope I haven't heard Professor Arikat well. She said 1,000 women were killed in the West Bank. What a lie. What a lie. 1,000 terrorists. Each one of them in his Facebook was photo with a gun, were killed in the West Bank to avoid bombing and terror on the buses and restaurants and synagogues in Israel. This is the reality we face with. As long as the Palestinians will continue to support terrorists, I don't see any possibility for a majority who support two-state solution in Israel. Thank you.
I'll just give 30 seconds to Dalal if you want to respond to that, because that was the only direct attack in this panel.
It should be unacceptable at this sophisticated level and civilized panels to accept such an attack on a person who believes in peace, for not only for me and my generation. I live in Palestine under military occupation, and now you're accusing me of being a terrorist or the Palestinians in the West Bank. We have been suffering from a state-organized terror all our lives, and it is really shameful for as a person like you who had lived 7 decades of your military occupation on civilians and Palestinians to continue to defend the Israeli military occupation while you are facing a case of genocide at the ICJ. We should rise up to our values, the Jewish values, I need to remind you, that never again came to say never again to humanity. I visited the concentration camps in Poland and in Germany to empathize and to tell myself that we should not allow history to be repeated again. But for somebody like you to come and accuse me and attack me, this should be unacceptable. As long as you believe that you are supreme to me and that we are not equal and that you're enjoying every impunity possible as you kill, raid, shell the children in Gaza and in the West Bank, then yes, it's okay. Because as long as the international community is also giving you the impunity you want, I also want to remind you that my cousin, it's been 5 years, he was murdered on the checkpoint between Bethlehem and Abu Dis. He was 26 years old athlete. He was engaged in a love relationship. The Israeli military occupation terminated his life in 2 seconds. His body is still with the Israelis. Why? Because they want to deprive us of the basic right of burying him and bidding farewell. What do you tell his parents? He did nothing. He was a very peaceful guy. Myself, I'm a professor, I teach diplomacy. I teach diplomacy to the Palestinian generations while they see the Israeli military occupation invade, raid in Jenin, in Tulkarem, in Nablus, in Ramallah, in Jericho, in Bethlehem, in Hebron, in Jerusalem, everywhere. Every Palestinian is attacked. From Hind Rajab to Shireen Abu Aqle, every woman is suffering under the Israeli military occupation. When you see people like me who still advocate for peace, who still believe in peace, and who still call for your right as Israelis to live in peace, you should thank me and not attack me. Thank you.
I guess a bit of
You haven't answered the way that you said that 1,000 millions of people in the West Bank is 7 of October.
Mr. Ramos, Dalla, we won't hear you if you speak over each other, and we're very well out of time. Dalla, if you allow us, it was important for you to respond to that, and I thank you, Mr. Ramos, for holding this panel has very well gone over
I want to say that the Palestinians are in the ICC for genocide as well.
This is an attack. This is
Because the Palestinians kill and want to kill all the Israelis.
I don't accept that. I'm sorry.
I cannot ignore, and you haven't apologized for your lie. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess with a reality check. We will have the conclusion of this in the hall in the reception area, and then downstairs. It actually started at 10:45, the main event. So thank you all for